Tonight, let's step somewhere most stories never go. Forget the movies, the shining armor, the slow-motion duels. This isn't Braveheart. This is the truth. The kind of truth that smells like wet wool, burned bread, and fear. If you were alive in medieval Europe, you wouldn't be a knight or a hero. You'd be a farmer. And tonight, in the middle of planting season, someone is about to knock on your door. Hey there, friend. Welcome back to Candlelit History. If you're new here, I'm really glad you found us. This is a place for quiet nights, for calm storytelling, and for history that helps you drift, not just think. So before we begin, take a moment to get comfortable, maybe dim the lights, or light a small candle if you have one. Let the glow dance a little. You can turn on a fan or a bit of background noise, something soft and steady. And if this kind of slow candlelit history helps you unwind, feel free to subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy it. I'd love to know where you're listening from, and what time it is where you are. It's always fascinating to imagine who's sharing this quiet moment around the world. Now, let's go back in time. The year is somewhere in the 1300s. The air smells of rain and turned soil. Your name could be William, or Thomas, or Hugh. It doesn't matter. You're one of millions of nameless men who feed the world with aching hands. You live in a cottage of wattle and daub, its walls patched with clay, its roof sagging under old thatch. Your wife and children are asleep. You can hear them breathing. The fire has gone down to faint red embers. Outside, a dog barks once, then stops, and then, the knock comes. It's not a polite knock. It's hard, insistent, with the weight of someone who knows you'll open whether you want to or not. You sit up, already knowing what it means. Every man in the village has been whispering about it for weeks. There's talk of the king's war across the sea, talk of quotas, numbers of men that must be provided. You had prayed, quietly, that it wouldn't be you, that maybe for once fortune would look elsewhere. But the knock keeps coming, and your stomach sinks like a stone. You open the door, and there he stands, the bailiff, the lord's man. Behind him, two soldiers in rusty mail, spears in hand, faces expressionless. He's holding a scroll, and he unrolls it with theatrical care, like a priest reading a sermon. Your name is on it. You don't remember the words he says, only the sound of them, the rhythm of command. You've been summoned under feudal levy, required to serve in your lord's army. You have 3 days to report at the muster field. Bring your own weapon, bring your own food, and pray for your soul. You nod, because what else can you do? Refusing means death, or worse, punishment for your family. You glance at your wife, now awake in the doorway, her face pale in the candlelight. She doesn't speak. The bailiff doesn't either. He just scratches a mark beside your name, and turns away. The soldiers follow him down the muddy lane, their boots squelching in the night. The sound fades slowly, until all that's left is the wind through the thatch. You sit back on the wooden bench, hands shaking. 3 days, that's how long you have to turn from farmer to soldier. You stare at the hearth, and realize that the world you knew, your fields, your children's laughter, your quiet routines, has just ended. War has come for you, not because you wanted it, but because someone far above you decided it was necessary. You look down at your hands. They're cracked, strong, stained from years of labor. Good hands for the plow, not the spear. In the corner hangs an old tool, a billhook, used for trimming hedges. You pick it up, turning it in the firelight. It's the closest thing you have to a weapon. It feels wrong, holding it this way, not as a farmer, but as something else. Something the world suddenly needs you to become. Outside, the village is quiet, but you know every man in every cottage is awake, sitting in silence just like you, waiting for dawn. You can almost hear the collective fear, hundreds of hearts beating the same uneven rhythm. You know tomorrow you'll see them all again, in the field, lined up, faces pale, pretending to be brave. You step outside for a moment, into the cold. The moon is low, veiled behind clouds. Your breath fogs in the air. You walk to the edge of your small plot, where new shoots are pushing through the damp earth. You'd just begun planting barley for the coming year. If you leave now, who will tend it? Who will feed your family? The war doesn't care. The crown doesn't care. All that matters is that your body fills a space in the line. You return inside, lie down beside your wife. Neither of you speaks. You listen to the small sounds, the faint bleat of a sheep outside, the slow drip of rain from the eaves. You try to imagine what war even looks like. You've never seen a battlefield, never held a sword. You've heard stories from travelers, of burning villages, men impaled on pikes, nobles feasting while peasants rot. But those are stories, distant, exaggerated. Surely it can't be like that. Surely God won't allow such horror. You cling to that thought, though even as you think it, you don't believe it. The candle flickers lower, sleep won't come. You keep seeing the bailiff's face, that cold, bureaucratic calm, the way he said your name, as if it were already carved into a headstone. You picture the soldiers behind him, their armor mottled with rust, their eyes hollow from some previous war. You wonder how many times they've stood at doors like yours, how many men they've sent to die. You finally drift into a shallow, haunted sleep, and when you wake, in just a few hours, the sky will be grey, and the village bell will be ringing. Men will gather in the square with their makeshift weapons and too thin clothes, and that's where your journey begins. Because this isn't a story about glory, it's about what really happened to the millions who marched, starved and fought for lords they never met. This is what medieval battles were really like, and tomorrow you'll be part of one. Morning breaks grey and heavy, the kind of sky that promises rain before noon. The village bell rings, slow and deliberate, each toll echoing across the damp fields. You wake before the sound ends. You didn't really sleep, just drifted in and out of uneasy half-dreams. Your wife is already up, packing what little she can into a small sack, a crust of bread, a piece of hard cheese, a water skin half full. She doesn't speak, and neither do you. There's nothing left to say that will make any of this better. You pull on your wool tunic, still damp from yesterday's rain, and tie the cord around your waist. Your boots squelch when you step outside. The mud is cold and sticky, clinging to everything. The air smells of smoke and wet straw. Across the lane, your neighbor Thomas is standing in his doorway, his youngest child clinging to his leg. He catches your eye and gives a faint nod, not of greeting, but of grim understanding. You both know what comes next. The bell stops, and in its place comes the sound of movement. Doors opening, voices murmuring, dogs barking nervously as men begin to gather. You join them, walking toward the center of the village where the bailiff waits, scroll in hand once again. He stands on an overturned cart to see above the crowd, his cloak already splattered with mud. The same two soldiers from last night flank him, and now you notice more men behind them, a small escort of riders in mismatched armor, watching silently, hands resting on their sword hilts. The bailiff unrolls his parchment and begins to read. One by one, the names are called. Each man steps forward, grim-faced, to confirm his presence. Some bring spears or axes. Others hold little more than sharpened sticks. One man carries a pitchfork. Another, a kitchen knife strapped to a broom handle. There's a quiet shared humiliation in it, the realization that you're not soldiers, just bodies being counted, like cattle before slaughter. As the list goes on, the murmur grows. You can hear snippets of conversation, a man asking if he'll be back before harvest, another whispering about hiding in the forest. Someone makes a joke that falls flat. Nobody laughs. When your name comes, you step forward, give a stiff nod, and step back into line. The bailiff marks the scroll again, satisfied, and continues. When the reading ends, he announces what everyone already knows. By order of the Lord, all able-bodied men must march to the muster field 3 miles east, where the king's captain will assemble the army. You have until sunset. Bring food for 3 days. Bring your own weapons. Any man who fails to appear will be branded a deserter and punished accordingly. He doesn't have to say what that means. Everyone already knows the stories. You turn home to say goodbye. The walk feels endless, even though it's only a few hundred steps. The cottages blur together through the mist. Children watch from doorways, their faces pale and wide-eyed. You wonder what they see when they look at you. A brave soldier, maybe, or just another frightened man pretending not to be. Inside, your wife is standing by the hearth, arms crossed. She's trying to be strong, but her lips are trembling. You take her hand, rough, chapped, familiar, and for a moment the world feels solid again. The smell of smoke and bread, the warmth of the fire, the small noises of your home. You want to memorize them all, because once you leave, you don't know if you'll ever come back. Your oldest son, barely 10, stares at you from the corner. "Will you kill the French, father?" he asks, voice barely above a whisper. You want to tell him something noble, that you'll fight bravely, that you'll come back a hero. But the words won't come. You ruffle his hair instead, and manage a faint smile. "I'll try," you say softly, and hope he doesn't hear the lie. By midday, the men begin to gather again at the edge of the village. The sky has turned darker, the clouds swelling with rain. The road east is already a river of mud. You join the line, pack slung over your shoulder, the billhook hanging from your belt. There are maybe 40 of you. Farmers, millers, a blacksmith, even the village priest walking beside you with his wooden cross. Nobody speaks much. The only sounds are boots squelching, and the low hum of the wind through the trees. After a mile, you pass a small shrine by the roadside, a weathered wooden figure of the Virgin Mary, her face worn smooth by centuries of hands. Every man touches it as he passes. Some kiss their fingers, others mutter quick prayers. You do both, though your words come out tangled. Protect them, you think, though you're not sure who you mean anymore. Your family, your village, or yourself. The road narrows as it winds through a stretch of woodland. Birds scatter from the branches ahead. You can hear coughing, the creak of leather, the occasional clang of metal from someone's makeshift armor. A few men have tried to pad themselves with extra clothing or straw, hoping it'll stop a blade. It won't, but nobody says so out loud. Belief is all they have. When the trees thin, you see the muster field below, a wide plain of trampled grass and tents. Smoke rises from dozens of campfires. Hundreds of men are already there, forming into groups under banners you don't recognize. The sight steals your breath. You'd imagined an army as something organized and shining. Rows of soldiers, maybe, or banners snapping proudly in the wind. But this is chaos. Everywhere you look, men are shouting, pushing, arguing. Some sit hunched by fires, others stumble around half-drunk. Horses snort and rear as handlers struggle to control them. The smell hits you before you reach the bottom of the hill, a thick, choking mix of sweat, manure, smoke, and fear. The bailiff herds your group toward a rough-looking sergeant, who barely glances at you before waving you to a patch of ground near the edge of camp. "You're under Lord Ferris's levy now," he says. "Form up and wait." Then he walks away, shouting at another group. You drop your pack and look around. The other men do the same. Thomas, your neighbor, kneels beside you, trying to fix the handle on his axe. His hands are shaking so badly, he can barely hold the wood steady. "It's not real," he mutters. "None of this feels real." You nod, though you know it is. The afternoon passes in a blur. More groups arrive, swelling the field until it's a sea of men. The sound never stops. The clash of tools, the crackle of fires, the constant low murmur of fear disguised as chatter. You see men with proper armor and weapons, knights and men-at-arms, walking among the levies like gods among mortals. They look you over the way one might inspect livestock. You can tell they don't expect you to last long. As night begins to fall, the captains ride through the camp. Orders are shouted, names are checked, and lists are rolled back up. Someone nearby starts singing a rough drinking song, trying to lift spirits, but it dies quickly when the sergeant yells for silence. The only light now comes from the fires and the pale moon. You sit beside Thomas, sharing what little food you have. The bread is stale, the cheese hard as stone, but it's something. Around you, men are whispering rumors that the enemy is only a few days away, that the march will start at dawn. Some claim the French are demons in armor, twice the size of men. Others swear they've seen omens, crows flying backward, strange lights in the sky. You try not to listen, but fear is contagious. A horn sounds in the distance, long, low, and mournful. Every conversation stops. For a moment, the whole camp seems to hold its breath. Then a voice rings out. "Tomorrow, we march." A cold wind sweeps across the field, snuffing out some of the smaller fires. You pull your cloak tighter and look toward the horizon. Somewhere out there, beyond the dark hills, is a battle you can't imagine, one you're not ready for. Thomas stares into the flames, his face pale. "Do you think we'll make it back?" he asks quietly. You don't answer right away. The firelight flickers in his eyes, and for a moment, he looks like a stranger. Finally, you say, "Ask me after tomorrow." He gives a hollow laugh, but it dies quickly. Around you, men lie down in the mud, wrapping themselves in thin blankets, trying to sleep. The night grows colder. You close your eyes, but the horn's echo lingers in your mind, low and relentless, like a warning, because tomorrow isn't just another march. Tomorrow is the beginning of everything that will break you, and in the darkness beyond the campfires, something is already moving. The morning begins with shouting, not the rhythmic toll of a bell this time, but the harsh bark of commands cutting through the mist. You wake to the sound of boots tramping past your head and the crack of whips urging oxen forward. The camp is already alive before the first light hits the horizon, smoke rising from 100 campfires, the smell of wet earth and burned fat thick in the air. You sit up, stiff and sore from a night on the ground, your cloak stiff with dew. Thomas is beside you, snoring softly, his breath misting in the cold. The sound of horses carries over the field. When you look toward the noise, you see them. The lords and knights arriving. The mood changes immediately. Men stand, wiping their faces, straightening what little clothing they have as if tidying up for judgment. The knights ride in under banners that catch the first pale light. Crimson, blue, gold. Their armor glints faintly even under the clouds. Every plate polished by servants who'll never see battle. For a moment they look like something from the old church paintings. Angels descending through fog, then one of them spits into the mud, and the illusion breaks. You've never seen so many people in one place. Thousands, maybe more, scattered across the rolling field. Each lord commands his own contingent, his retinue, the sergeants and men-at-arms who owe him loyalty. You watch them forming in loose ranks, calling out names, shouting numbers. Around them, peasants like you shuffle in uneven groups, clutching spears or axes, waiting for someone to tell them what to do. The sound is overwhelming, the constant murmur of voices, the clang of metal, the whinny of horses. It's not the proud roar of an army. It's chaos held together by fear. A rider passes close by, shouting orders. His armor is bright, but his face is red and sweating, his voice raw. He's trying to organize hundreds of men who don't even speak the same dialect. You hear the frustration in his tone, though you can't catch all his words. Half the men around you just stare, confused, until a sergeant translates in simpler terms. Form up, stand straight, don't move until told. He has to shout it 3 times before anyone understands. The army is supposed to be one thing, one force under one banner, but from where you stand, it looks more like a market day gone wrong. You see priests moving through the lines, blessing the men with hurried gestures. You see cooks stirring pots of watery stew that smells faintly of turnip and ash. You see camp followers, women carrying baskets of bread, children leading donkeys loaded with gear, old men limping behind wagons. This is the real face of war, not knights and glory, but a traveling city made of mud and exhaustion. By mid-morning, the captains begin inspection. One by one they pass along the rows, checking the weapons, the armor, the supplies. When they reach your group, the sergeant beside you stiffens and calls for attention. You grip your billhook tightly, hoping it looks like a real weapon. The captain barely glances at it. He's a young man, maybe 20, his beard too neat for someone who's seen fighting. "Levy from Ashcombe?" he asks. The sergeant nods. "Half will go to the front under Lord Ferris, the rest to the baggage guard. If they can't fight, they can carry." Carry. You know what that means. Moving wagons, hauling supplies, digging trenches. You're not sure whether to be relieved or insulted. But before you can think, the sergeant barks. You heard him. Half left, half right, and starts pushing men into 2 lines. You end up in the fighting half, the one destined for the front. A murmur runs through the ranks as a group of mercenaries arrives from the north. You've heard of them, hardened fighters who sell their swords to the highest bidder. Their armor is mismatched, dented, but their eyes are steady. One of them catches you staring and grins, revealing teeth blackened with rot. "First time?" he asks, in a rough accent. You nod before you can stop yourself. "Don't worry," he says, tightening the strap on his gauntlet. You'll only be scared the first time you kill someone. After that, you'll be too tired to care. He walks off laughing. As the day drags on, the weather turns worse. The wind picks up, carrying sheets of fine drizzle that seep into your clothes. The ground turns slick again, your boots sinking with every step. The knights retreat to their tents, but you and the others have nothing but thin cloaks. You huddle together under a tree, trying to keep the fire going with damp wood. Around you, the army stretches to the horizon, a mass of shivering, hungry men bound together by duty and fear. You notice small things that the songs never mention. The way men cough constantly, their breath heavy with sickness, the lice crawling in seams of clothing, the smell, gods, the smell, of thousands of unwashed bodies, of horses, of rotting meat somewhere too close to the fires. There's no escape from it. The air itself feels contaminated. At noon the bailiff returns, riding along the edge of camp with a different scroll this time. He's distributing pay, not coin, but promises. Slips of parchment stamped with the Lord's seal, saying you'll be paid after victory. You know what that means. Paper means nothing when you're dead. Still, men line up anyway, clutching the scraps like relics. Hope, even false hope, is something to hold on to. Near evening, a commotion breaks out near the supply wagons. You stand on tiptoe to see what's happening. Two men are fighting, peasants, like you, swinging clumsily at each other. Someone shouts, "Thief!" and the crowd parts just in time for one of the sergeants to stride in. He doesn't bother asking questions. He draws his sword and strikes the accused man down in a single motion. The body falls face first into the mud. The sergeant wipes his blade on the man's tunic and says flatly, "Anyone else hungry for justice?" No one answers. The message is clear. When night comes, you're too tired to eat. You lie down on your cloak, staring at the shifting clouds. Somewhere nearby, a group of soldiers is singing again, this time slower, almost mournful. The lyrics are about a farmer who goes to war and never comes home. The melody is simple, haunting. You close your eyes, but it stays with you. Later, a whisper moves through the camp. A rumor passed from fire to fire. The scouts have returned. The enemy is close. You hear men mutter prayers. Others curse under their breath. The knights are meeting in their grand pavilion, their torches flickering like stars through the mist. Whatever they decide tonight will decide everything for you. You roll onto your side, trying to find warmth in the cold. Thomas is already asleep, his hands clutching his axe even as he dreams. You think about home again, about the quiet of the fields, the smell of baking bread, your wife's voice humming softly in the evenings. It feels like another lifetime. A horn sounds somewhere far off, faint but unmistakable. It's not the usual signal of the camp. This one is deeper, longer, almost mournful. You sit up, listening. The fires nearest you sputter as the wind shifts. Men around you start to stir, looking toward the darkness beyond the camp. You can't see anything, just the black line of the forest, the mist crawling low across the grass. But something feels wrong, too quiet, too still, as if the land itself is holding its breath. Then, from the shadows at the far edge of the field, comes the echo of another horn, this one not your own, and every man who hears it knows what that means. The enemy is closer than anyone thought. The horn fades, and the camp exhales like a startled animal. Torches flare, orders ripple outward, muddled by distance and dialect, until a sergeant's voice lands at your fire with the weight of an iron pot. Stand, kit in hand, inspection. You scramble up, mud clinging to your cloak, and fall into a crooked line with Thomas and the others. Not soldiers, but men trying to look like soldiers while their breath fogs the air. This is where the lie of equipment meets the need of war. You can see it in every pair of eyes. The silent question, is what I'm holding enough to keep me alive? A cart creaks toward your group, piled with odds and ends, splintered shields, bundles of ash poles, a crate of iron heads clanking like broken bells. Two boys, squires by the dagger and nervous pride, hop down and start handing things out as if they were distributing bread at a feast. They aren't. They're issuing the difference between bruises and burial. One man receives a round buckler no wider than a dinner plate. its rim chewed by rust and teeth marks from some rat with ambitious taste. Someone else gets a warped targe, leather cracked, boss dented. You hold out your hands and catch an arming cap, quilted linen, sweat-stained, smelling of old vinegar, followed by a kettle hat with a split along the brim. The metal is thin where it shouldn't be, and heavy where you wish it weren't. You set the cap on first. Its seams scratch your scalp. The hat goes over, and for an instant you feel taller, as if the rim itself were a small roof you could carry into the storm. More carts trundle up. A smith with 4 arms like tree roots opens a chest and dumps out heads for polearms, bills with moon-curved hooks, glaive blades with long flanges to bite deep through cloth and leather, broad vultures made for hewing. He moves with practiced boredom, matching iron to ash the way a cook matches ladle to cauldron. His hammer comes down once, twice, peening a rivet through your pole. He does not look at your face. He is building a hedge of wood and iron, and you are one more stake in it. Sergeants drift along the line, correcting grips, swapping out lengths, short pole to the back, long poles forward. Hook outward, not inward. You want to stop a horse, not snag your friend's ribs. A dozen hands turn the wrong way and turn again. The lesson repeats until bodies remember what minds cannot hold under pressure. You copy the front rank, left hand close, right hand near the butt, feet offset to make a narrow target. The bill hook at your belt feels suddenly childish. The new head on your ash staff gleams dull and honest in the torchlight, its curve promising a kind of work you never wanted to do. Armor drifts through the levee like a blessing that missed its mark. One man in your file is given a padded jacket, an accaton, quilted thick with lint and old wool. He touches it like a relic and fumbles the ties with clumsy gratitude. Another is issued a jack of plates, a stitched leather jacket, hiding dozens of small iron plates between layers of cloth. It clinks when he breathes. He cannot stop smiling, even though it smells like a stable floor and fits him like a wet sack. A third man receives mail, not a shirt, just a collar and shoulder piece, the links riveted and black with oil. He pulls it on and staggers under the unexpected drag. You help settle it, fingers finding the grain of metal like you would the grain of wood. Helmets, where they exist, are a museum of yesterday's battles. Kettle hats, iron skullcaps, a dented sallet with its visor long gone, and, to the laughter of the boys, a cauldron with 2 holes punched for a strap. A sergeant's face hardens, and the laughter dies. Better a pot than a prayer, he says, setting the thing on a teenager's head and buckling it tight. The boy goes quiet, his eyes huge beneath the rim. A pair of archers drift by, their yew-bows unstrung but still defiant in the hand. Their fingers are thick at the joints, knotted by years of draw. One wears a leather bracer polished dark, where the string has kissed him 1,000 times. Their quivers hold a democracy of misery. Broadheads for cutting, long bodkins for punching into mail. You meet the eye of the older one for a moment. He nods at your polearm, and taps the iron tip with 2 fingers. Keep it low when they come. Feet and shins first, he murmurs, and then he's gone into the moving fog of bodies. Near the baggage line, a farrier drives nails through a war horse's new shoe with the swift mercy of habit. The beast's flanks show the crosshatch of brush and the ghost of old scars. You realize, with a strange, dry swallow, that your pole's hook is shaped not only for men. A charger at speed is a wall. A hedge must catch a wall. Someone has thought this through more times than you want to imagine. Maintenance begins with desperation and ends with ritual. A boy passes out stones for sharpening. Another trails with a pot of goose fat and a rag. You sit and draw the stone along your blade. Long pulls that whisper. Thomas binds the base of his axe head with rawhide to keep the haft from splitting. Someone wraps the haft of a spear with twine for grip, and then smears it with pitch warmed over a twig of flame. The air tastes like resin and wet iron. Around you, men make their tools into extensions of their own stubborn intent. Cords knotted, straps tucked, points tested against the sole of a boot, and withdrawn with a respectful wince. A banner goes up near your cluster. Lord Ferris's device. A pale tower on dark cloth. It snaps once and then hangs, heavy in the damp. Beneath it, a drummer and a boy with a curved horn take their places. The drummer is missing 2 fingers. He holds the stick in a way that looks wrong until he plays. Then it looks inevitable. A captain rides in a slow circle, looking down into faces, letting the horse's calm become a kind of sermon. Listen for your banner, the sergeant says. Find it if you're lost. If you can't find it, look for the drum. If you can't hear the drum, look for the crowd that isn't running. A few men laugh, and the sound startles itself into silence. Food appears the way mercy sometimes does. Unplanned, uneven. A cauldron stops long enough for a ladle of broth to find your cup. Thin, smoky, hot. It warms your hands and tells your stomach stories about meat that may or may not be true. You drink anyway. A priest walks the line with a small wooden cross and a muttered blessing that hits everyone equally, armor or rags. He smells of ash and damp wool. When he reaches you, he presses the wood to your brow. For the first time all day, your breath feels steady. A raw voice calls for shieldmen to step forward. A handful do, and are handed slabs of wicker faced with hide, light, wide, already scuffed to grey. They practice setting them down, edges kissing, to make a sudden wall. The sergeant walks along the line, kicks one shield, and nods when it doesn't move. This saves archers, he says. If you've got sense, it saves you too. He assigns 2 men to carry spare poles for the front rank. When a pole breaks, and it will, you pass these forward. No gaps. Gaps are graves. The light is draining from the sky, leaving everything the color of bruised fruit. Captains converge in the pavilion again, their silhouettes moving against canvas like cutouts in a lantern show. You practice the only drill anyone trusts you with. Step, plant, thrust. Step, plant, thrust. The rhythm becomes a kind of breathing. The drummer taps a slow pattern, and feet try to learn it together. Somewhere beyond the fires, a scout's horse arrives lathered white. The rider slides to the ground and stumbles toward the tent. People look without looking. Then the decisions spill out in pieces that become whole as they pass from mouth to mouth. The enemy is not waiting. Roads will swallow the night. The army must move. Not tomorrow, not at dawn, but now. The drummer shifts his beat. The horn boy lifts the curve of bone to his lips. Along the lines, packs are yanked tight, straps bitten into place, last knots checked. A sergeant strides by with a coil of rope and a stack of spare linchpins. If a wheel breaks, you become a wheel. He growls to the baggage men. If a friend stumbles, you become his legs. He says to you, softer. You cinch your cloak close and find your place in the column marked by the pale tower banner. Thomas stands just behind your shoulder, hat brim dripping. The kettle hat sits oddly on your head, a ring of rain, a private horizon. The blade on your polearm is clean, edges oily dark. Your hands know the weight now, the swing that isn't a swing, the thrust that must be straight. The drum rolls once, and the whole line leans forward an inch, a single creature deciding to move. Somewhere far to the left, another horn answers, too distant to be yours, too close to be anyone else's. The captains do not turn their heads. The drum answers again, louder. The line takes its first step. Mud accepts your boot with the wet certainty of a mouth around bread. You look up and realize the fires are falling behind you, one by one, as if the field itself is closing its eyes. And ahead, beyond the rim of your helmet and the reach of your pole, the road opens, long, black and hungry. The drum keeps its slow heartbeat as the column lurches forward. Thousands of feet churn the mud into a river of filth, and the sound, a wet, endless squelching, becomes the march's true rhythm. The fog clings to the fields, thick and low, so you can't see far ahead. Only the faint ripple of banners above the heads of men tells you that there's more army beyond the mist. Somewhere up there, the knights are already moving, horses stamping and snorting in protest at the cold. You and Thomas trudge in their wake, part of a human tide flowing towards somewhere you can't yet imagine. The first hour is tolerable. The road out of the muster field winds through low pasture land, and the drizzle feels almost refreshing after the smoke and stink of camp. But before long, the rain hardens, the ground turns slick, and every step becomes an argument between your boots and the mud. The spear shaft bites into your shoulder where you've slung it. Your pack cuts at your collarbones. The kettle hat is too loose. It keeps slipping down and tapping your nose with each uneven step. Around you, the sounds of the army merge into something monstrous. Coughing, muttering, the clatter of wagons, the occasional whinny of a horse. It's not a noble procession, it's a moving wound. You pass through small hamlets, clusters of cottages whose inhabitants stand in doorways, watching silently. Some cross themselves, others simply stare. To them you're not heroes, you're death on legs. Armies leave nothing behind but hunger. You can feel their fear, though none of you have yet drawn a sword. A woman throws a crust of bread toward the road. Two boys scramble for it, wrestling in the mud, until a sergeant rides by and lashes at them with a switch. Nobody looks back. The smell grows worse as the day drags on. Wet leather, sweat, manure, and the sweet rot of food gone bad. You begin to notice how uneven the line is, the men ahead slogging slower and slower as exhaustion seeps in. Somewhere far back, someone begins singing, a peasant tune about home and harvest. The rhythm catches for a few lines, then dies out when the rain grows heavier. The road ahead dissolves into grey water. By midday your stomach aches with hunger. You eat a crust of bread from your pack, so hard you have to soak it in water before your teeth can manage it. The bread tastes of damp wood and ash. The water drawn from a barrel last night has gone sour. Still you drink. Everyone does. Some have already drained their skins and are chewing rain just to keep their mouths wet. The sergeants shout for pace, but the line keeps slowing. The wagons bog down. Men throw shoulders against wheels slick with mud, heaving until the carts lurch free again. Every few minutes, another ox groans and stumbles, too weak to go on. When one collapses, they cut its throat and drag the carcass off the road. The blood mixes with the mud, turning the ground into a red paste that sticks to your boots. By late afternoon, you've learned that marching isn't walking. It's endurance disguised as movement. Your feet are numb, your calves burn, and every breath tastes of rust. The men around you have stopped speaking altogether. The army has settled into its rhythm. Step, squelch, breath, curse, repeat. The sound becomes hypnotic. You start to lose the sense of where you are. The landscape blurs into endless grey, ditches, fields, the occasional patch of forest. You only realize you've left your home county when the soil changes color beneath your feet. That night, when the order to halt finally comes, it's not with ceremony but exhaustion. The column stops where it stands, men dropping their packs and collapsing in the mud. There's no village, no shelter, only open ground and a few scattered trees. Fires flicker to life one by one, small and feeble against the wind. You and Thomas gather what twigs you can, which isn't much. The fire smokes more than it burns. The sergeant walks past, barking that no one should stray far. Scouts say enemy riders have been seen nearby. No one argues, no one moves. Dinner is a scrap of salted meat, boiled in muddy water. It tastes of iron and despair, but it's hot, and that's enough. You eat in silence, listening to the sounds of the camp. The groaning of oxen, the low murmur of prayers, the hiss of wet firewood. Somewhere to your left, a man begins to cry quietly. Nobody tells him to stop. You just stare into the smoke and wait for it to end. When you finally lie down, your body rebels. Every muscle cramps, your feet throb, and the cold has worked its way deep into your bones. You wrap your cloak tighter, but it's soaked through. Sleep comes only in fragments, moments of darkness between bursts of sound. Men coughing, horses snorting, the soft rustle of rats moving through the straw. At one point you wake to a hand on your shoulder. It's Thomas, eyes wide in the firelight. "Did you hear that?" he whispers. You listen. At first there's nothing. Then faint, distant, the echo of hoofbeats. They fade as quickly as they came, swallowed by the wind. You tell him it's nothing, maybe a patrol. But long after he lies back down, you're still awake, staring into the dark beyond the dying fire, wondering if something out there is already watching you. At dawn the march begins again. The camp dissolves into motion with mechanical dread. You pull your boots back on. They're stiff, heavy with dried mud, and your feet are covered in blisters. Each step feels like walking on hot stones. Around you, men limp forward without speaking. The sergeants yell until their voices break, trying to keep the line moving. The drum resumes its slow, relentless beat. As the sun rises, the mist begins to burn away, revealing the land you're passing through, wide fields flattened by the season, dotted with the skeletons of old villages, roofless churches, burned barns, stone walls half swallowed by moss. You can tell an army's been through here before. Crows scatter from the ditches as you pass, and the smell of rot drifts up from somewhere unseen. The veterans in the column keep their eyes forward. You start to understand why. By midday, the rain returns. Harder now, driven by wind. The road becomes a quagmire. Men slip and fall, and others trample over them, too exhausted to stop. A wagon overturns, spilling barrels of grain into the mud. Hungry hands snatch at it, scooping handfuls into mouths before the sergeant rides in swinging a whip. The lash cracks through the air, cutting across men and grain alike. The soldiers scatter, clutching their faces. The sergeant shouts something about discipline and theft, but his voice is lost in the wind. Later, as the light fades again, you notice how the march has changed everyone. Faces that once looked familiar now seem older, grey around the eyes. Jokes have vanished. No one talks about home anymore. The horizon has become a kind of prison, a line that never gets closer, no matter how far you walk. When the order to stop finally comes that evening, you almost don't believe it. The ground beneath you feels like it's still moving. You sit down too tired to even untie your pack. Around you, the fires rise once more, small islands of light in a sea of mud. The rain has stopped, but the air is sharp and cold. You can see your breath. The captain rides past on his horse, shouting that tomorrow they'll reach the main host, the king's army. You don't even look up. You just stare into the fire and let the words pass through you, like wind through reeds. Thomas stirs beside you. Do you think it's true? He asks quietly. That we'll see the king. You shrug. You've stopped thinking of kings and glory. All you can see is the road stretching behind you. A black scar through the land, dotted with the dead oxen and broken wagons you've left behind. Before you can answer, a distant crack splits the silence. Not thunder, but sharper, closer. You freeze. Another follows, then a faint rolling echo. Some of the older soldiers look up immediately. Catapults, one mutters. Another shakes his head. No, that's guns. The wind shifts, carrying a faint smell. Smoke and saltpeter. The stench of burned powder. The veterans exchange looks that need no words. Whatever lies ahead of this march is no longer rumor. It's waiting for you, awake and ready. By morning the distant rumbles are gone, but the worry they planted remains. Like a pebble in a boot you can't quite shake free. The column shuffles out of the trampled field, and the first order of the day isn't glory or banners, it's calories. A clerk on a pony rides along the ditch, calling out units for ration issue. The word rations rolls through the ranks like a promise people are afraid to believe. You fall in with your file near a wagon that smells of damp wood and old grain. A cooper sits on the tailboard hammering hoops back onto a leaking barrel. Every strike sends out a small spray of brown ale, and men flinch as if the droplets were gold coins flying into the mud. Bread comes first, squat loaves the color of dust, heavy with pea flour and ground hulls. They're handed out by weight, not kindness. A man with a scale and an eye like a bead counts, slices, and moves on. The loaf warm from the bakehouse is a fairy tale. This is yesterday's bake from somewhere behind you, and it sweats in your hands. Next is a wedge of something called cheese by people who don't have teeth to lose, salt-packed, gritty, the rind like bark. A ladle of dried peas to keep in your sack, if you can find water and time to soften them. Salt for some, not for most. If you have a cup, you get ale. Thin, sour, safer than the ditches. If you don't, you watch it spill away and try not to think about thirst. Around the ration cart, tiny economies flicker to life. A man trades a length of twine for a second ladle of peas. Another swaps a little iron nail for a sip of ale, and then watches the drinker tip back his head as if he'd just tasted spring. A sutler, a woman with sturdy shoes and shrewd eyes, sells onions and a twist of pepper for prices that would have bought a pig at home. Nobody argues. Pepper turns ditch water into broth, at least in the mouth. You eat walking, because the road doesn't wait. You break the loaf along its fault line and realize the inside is not done. Sticky, doughy heat clings to your fingers, it will sit in your gut like a stone, and yet you are grateful. Thomas chews with his head down, jaw working, eyes distant. Chew long, he mutters, a tip from some old hand, as if time can coax more strength from flour and hope. By midday the ale barrel is a memory, water is next, and water is decision. The sergeants shout the rule that everyone knows, and nobody keeps, fill only from running streams. Running water is cleaner, they say. But the road intersects a shallow pond first, mirror still, ringed with trampled reeds. The first thirsty men fall to their knees and drink by the hatful. Others hold back and watch, counting flies. You and Thomas keep walking until the track drops into a gully where a little brook climbs over stones. It looks right, quick, bright, laughing in the sunlight as if it had never heard of armies. You kneel and fill your leather bottle. The cold climbs into your wrist, and for a second the world is only that shock of clean. Then an older soldier touches your shoulder and points upstream. 20 paces away, caught in a tangle of branches, lies the pale stomach of a dead ewe, hide opened by something's teeth. The wool moves with the water the way grass moves with wind. You stop breathing. The man shakes his head, spits, and climbs out of the gully without a word. You pour out the bottle. The sound it makes, glug glug glug, feels like heartbreak. The army's kitchen is everywhere and nowhere. 1,000 little fires when the march halts, each with its own story. You learn the geometry of a cook fire, stones for a pot, a second line to shield it from wind, twig bundles dried under cloaks. Pottage becomes a theory you can practice, peas that never quite soften, onions if you were rich at the sutler's cart. Bits of bacon if some lord's granary broke open behind you and you got there before the sergeant. A man with a hand quern grinds a handful of grain to thicken his pot, the little stones singing together with each turn. He offers you a spoon. It tastes like smoke and earth and relief. Rules trail the food like wolves. When official requisition parties go out, they carry tallies, notched sticks and parchment promises, and a moral argument the villagers never accept. The king will pay later. Later is a village word. Armies live in now. When the tallies fail, men who call themselves foragers melt into hedgerows and return with chickens that followed them, with apples that fell into their sacks, with a duck that wanted to learn to march. Everyone can hear the lie, and the sergeant's whip makes its own argument about discipline. You are careful to look at your feet. Sometimes the road intersects luck. Near sunset the column stumbles upon a manor bake-oven, a stone dome squatting by a byre, radiating yesterday's heat. The lord is absent. His steward is not. He stands with arms folded while soldiers queue, each man allowed to slide a small round into the mouth with a peel, and take it out when he can smell the browning. The line barely moves. A boy with ash on his cheeks, the steward's apprentice, sneaks you a space ahead of 3 men for a coin that doesn't exist. You pretend to pay with the promise of a debt you cannot name. When your round comes out, you share it with Thomas. It's smoky at the edge and real in the center, and for 10 bites you both forget what the road demands. Scarcity teaches creativity. A man shows you how to scald nettles and mash them with a pebble of fat until the sting dies and the green turns mild. Another robs a hedgerow of hawthorn berries and boils them until they surrender sweetness. A shepherd's wife, pressed by a requisition party, and still defiant, sells you a handful of whey and 2 sour curds. For your belly, she says, not kindly, and you nod as if you deserve either the curds or her anger. Hunger changes men slowly, and then all at once. Jokes grow sparse. Eyes drift toward packs, not their own. One evening 2 soldiers return with a sack of rye from a mill left half abandoned. The flour clumps oddly. That night at the fire, a young man who ate most of it grips his legs and says the muscles burn like hot wires beneath his skin. His fingers jump of their own accord. He laughs at first because fear comes in strange shapes, then stops laughing and rocks back and forth. The older men exchange a look that has no word attached to it. Someone mutters something about blighted grain. The fire snaps. You stare at your crust and try not to count symptoms in your body that belong to someone else. The latrine line is where rumors go to multiply. Men discuss how to make water safer. A long boil, a handful of vinegar, if you can beg it from a pikeman, who carries a small flask for aches, a pinch of powdered charcoal stolen from yesterday's embers. A surgeon's mate passes by with a bundle of rolled linen and advises everyone to avoid the pond with the red rim. You crossed at noon. A dead horse lies beneath the far bank, he says, and he's tired of soaring into men whose stomachs have declared war. He keeps walking because the line never ends. You learn to carry your food like secrets. The last crust tucked into the lining of your cloak. The spare handful of peas wrapped in a rag and tied inside your hat. The onion hidden in your boot, until its perfume makes secrecy impossible. Thomas shows you how to cut a sliver of fat and rub it along your lips to trick the mouth into believing it has eaten. You think of your wife rendering tallow in the hearth at home, and for a moment the heat of the memory is almost as good as supper. Not all hunger sits on your side of the road. In one village, gaunt faces line a fence. A priest stands before them, and argues with your officer in a voice that trembles with anger and cold. He points at the children. The officer points at the parchment of purveyance and the edge of his sword in the same motion. In the end, a compromise. Nobody believes in a cart of grain for the army, a tally for the Lord to redeem later, a promise of bread to the village when the war passes again like weather. You walk away trying to carry both your ration and the look in the priest's eyes. You fail at both. Night brings the smell of fat when there's any to be had. Once a draft ox goes down for the last time, and a butcher in a leather apron appears with a knife as if conjured from the mud. He works quick because the dark carries other mouths. Offal hits the pot first. Heart, liver, a strip of honeycomb tripe, and the stew that follows is both miracle and dare. You eat a small bowl and feel strength creep back along the bones of your arms like a remembered hymn. Then come the days when even that feels like a story someone told you. Barrels arrive already sour. A cart of flour reaches camp as paste, and then as paste runs away in the rain. The sutler's prices climb like a ladder to a window you can't reach. Men steal a sip, a bite, a look they shouldn't. Punishment is quicker now. The army has no patience left. Late one afternoon, the column halts beside a river you've never seen on any map you've imagined. It runs broad and bright between willows, the far bank low and inviting. The order goes down the line. Fill your skins. Wash your faces. Be quick. You kneel on the pebbles and the cold through your palms feels like a blessing finally spelled right. The current is brisk enough to rinse away doubt. You and Thomas drink in careful pulls, stopping before your bellies slosh. You lean forward for one last fill, and that's when the light changes. A slight shadow where no cloud crosses the sun. You glance upstream. Caught against the bank in the reeds is a tangle of branches and cloth, and within it something pale that should not be pale. A hand, swollen, turning slowly in the current, the fingers opening and closing with the push of water as if still trying to grasp the air. And from the far side of the river, on the low rise beyond the willows, a horn answers the evening birds. It's not yours. The horn fades, leaving the river to whisper its own secrets. The sergeants shout to move, to shoulder packs and close ranks, and you obey because obedience is the last thread holding everyone upright. The column turns inland along a track lined with broken fences and nettles high as your knee. Ahead, smoke rises, not the thick column of battle but the lazy, defeated kind that clings to earth rather than sky. The smell tells you before your eyes do, the army is making camp again. When you crest a low ridge, the plain spreads out like a wound. Thousands of tents and fires squatting under the twilight, wagons in long ribs, horses tethered in black lines that stamp and snort against the flies. It should feel safe, this mass of men. But the noise is wrong. Too little laughter, too much coughing. You can feel the weariness like a fog heavier than the weather itself. A sergeant points you and Thomas toward the outer ring, near the baggage carts. Dig your own ditches, he grunts. No drainage, no sleep. You drop your pack and start scraping a shallow trench with the edge of your billhook. The soil is clay thick enough to cling to the blade. Every pull feels like trying to carve stone. Thomas works beside you in silence, breath misting. Around you men are setting up shelters, not the neat tents of the knights but lean-tos made from spare poles and cloaks stretched taut. Some dig holes just deep enough to lie in. Roofs made from branches and mud, the smell of wet wool and smoke fusing into one heavy perfume. The quartermaster's boys move through the rows, tossing straw for bedding. The straw is damp, clumped together from old rain, but you grab an armful anyway. When you spread it beneath your cloak, it gives off the scent of rot and mouse droppings. Still, it's better than the naked ground. You sit back for a moment, rubbing your shoulders, and look toward the heart of the camp where the Lord's tents rise like pale islands under banners. Lanterns glow inside them, silhouettes of men gesturing over maps and cups of wine. Their laughter carries faintly, the high clear sound of people whose bellies are full. Someone nearby strikes a flint. Sparks leap. A small flame catches. You join them, feeding the fire with strips of bark and the dry edge of your pack straps. The orange glow softens the faces around you. Hollow-eyed men, unshaven, some coughing into their sleeves. The talk is quiet. Fragments of home. A wife's name. A child's laugh. A half-remembered recipe for stew. Each man tells himself he's just talking to pass time. But really he's talking to remember he exists. As darkness settles, the camp begins to change. Smoke thickens, heavy with grease. The smell of cooking meat drifts from the inner rings, where the knights feast on the best cuts while the rest gnaw bones thrown aside like scraps for dogs. Thomas watches the glow from their fires, jaw tight. They eat. We dig, he mutters. You want to agree, but words would make it too real. Instead, you busy yourself cleaning your weapon. The billhook's curve catches the firelight, red along the edge. You scrape away the dried mud, smear a little fat on the blade to keep it from rusting. It's become a ritual, small, steady, controllable. Around you, the camp is a body of its own. The cough of 100 throats, the shuffle of boots, the moan of horses stamping for feed. 1,000 sounds that together form one long exhale of exhaustion. Later, a priest walks past, swinging a censer that gives off more smoke than scent. Confession if you want it, he calls. A few men follow, kneeling in the mud beside the cart he's turned into an altar. You watch, though you don't move. You're not sure what you'd confess. Fear, anger, the quiet hope that the battle never comes. The priest's Latin drones softly, ending each blessing with a cross drawn in the air, invisible in the dark. Then come the healers. They make their rounds with small lanterns, bandaging the blistered feet of men too sore to walk. You see one lad sitting shirtless, back flayed raw from carrying his pack too long. The surgeon smears goose grease on the skin and ties a linen strip around his chest. Rest tomorrow, he says, knowing the boy won't. The surgeon moves on, his lantern bobbing like a small star swallowed by smoke. By full dark, the camp's mood begins to turn. The ale rations open, thin, sour stuff stored in half-rotted barrels, but strong enough to dull edges. Laughter starts near the wagons, wild and uneven. Dice clatter on shields. Someone strums a lute, one string forever out of tune. Voices rise in argument, in song, in prayer. The army becomes a chorus of contradictions. Fear, boredom, desire. Men who haven't smiled in days begin shouting bawdy songs about women they'll never see again. Somewhere, 2 soldiers fight over bread. The fight ends quickly, a muffled grunt and then silence. No one goes to look. You and Thomas sit close to your small fire, knees drawn to your chests. He breaks the last of your shared loaf and hands you the bigger piece. You shake your head, but he insists. You're thinner, he says. You laugh softly. Everyone's thinner. The bread tastes like ash, but it's warm. A sudden cry cuts through the noise. High, panicked, near the horse lines. You both turn as a figure runs past, waving his arms. Fire, someone shouts. In seconds, chaos. The flame leaps from one tent to the next, the oil from a knocked-over lantern feeding it into a roaring wall. Men rush to douse it with buckets of water and ale. Horses rear, eyes rolling white. The sound, screaming men, screaming beasts, turns the camp into madness. You grab your cloak, beating at sparks that land near you. Smoke burning your throat. The heat is fierce, alive. When it's over, 1/3 of the tents are gone. The air stinks of burnt hair and cloth. 3 men are missing. Their names are whispered, then forgotten when the sergeant walks by saying tomorrow's march will start before dawn. No rest for anyone. You sit back down, chest heaving, eyes watering from the smoke. The fire you tended earlier is nothing now, just a black smear in the mud. The night grows colder. One by one voices fade, until only the wind and the quiet shuffle of sentries remain. You lie on your straw, staring at the faint glow from the nobles' tents. For a moment you let yourself imagine being one of them. Warm, fed, safe. Then a coughing fit from the next row snaps you back to reality. Thomas is already asleep beside you, face turned toward the ground. His breath rattles faintly. You watch the horizon for a while. The faint reddish smear where the fire burned is the only light left. Somewhere out there, the enemy's camp must look the same. Tired men, small fires, too much fear to sleep. You close your eyes and try to rest, but every creak and shuffle feels like a warning. The smell of ash still clings to your hair. Your stomach growls, unanswered. Just before you drift off, you hear a new sound. Not thunder, not wind. A low rhythmic clatter, faint but steady, like hooves on hard ground. You freeze, listening. The sound stops, then starts again, closer this time. The sentries don't shout. No alarm comes. Only the horses begin to stir, stamping nervously in the dark. You sit up slowly, heart thudding in your chest. Through the smoke and fog, far beyond the last line of wagons, something glints once, metal catching moonlight. Then it's gone, and in the silence that follows, the night holds its breath. The camp does not sleep so much as dim. Orders roll outward like ripples from a stone. Double the sentries, no fires beyond the third ring, weapons kept to hand. A runner passes your shelter and hisses a password you're to carry to the next man. A single word, simple enough to remember when your mouth is dry. There will be a countersign at dawn, they say, and if you give the wrong one in the fog, a friend will put iron through you before an enemy has the chance. You repeat the word to Thomas, and he repeats it back until it feels like a prayer disguised as a command. Scouts return in twos and threes, lather crusting white on their horses' chests. They speak into a captain's ear, and the captain rides toward the pavilion, where the lords sit like candle flames behind canvas. Now and then the flap lifts and a gust of lamplight spills across the mud, throwing long shadows of helms and antlers and map rods that look like spears. Rumor grows legs in the dark. The enemy is camped by a brook. Their horse is on the left. Their gunners have only a few barrels left. Their crossbow windlasses are slow. They have more men. They have fewer. They are starving. They are singing. Truth becomes another ration. Short, thin, almost enough. Along the outer ditch, a new task takes shape. Stakes are cut from hedgerow oak and driven into the earth at an angle, their points facing outward. You and Thomas join the line, swinging mallets until your palms sting. The wood bites earth with a satisfying thunk. When the sergeant checks the hedge, he nods once. That'll make a horse think twice, he says. Then adds, and a man who forgets which way to run. A few paces away, a file is issued, handfuls of chalk to smear on hats and shoulders. A poor man's livery so. In the press, the wrong blade is less likely to find you. You scratch a pale mark across Thomas's sleeve. He does the same for you. A quiet anointing. Near the baggage line, a scribe has set up a plank on 2 buckets and calls for names. Men queue with awkward, ashamed expressions, as if asking a stranger to witness something private. One dictates a debt, another the gift of a knife to a brother, a third a message that will never travel farther than the scribe's satchel. Tell Alice the hen's sitting well, take the eggs early. You stand in line until you can see the scribe's ink-stained fingers, and then step out again because you cannot decide what words are small enough to carry your whole house. Later, you watch him sand a page dry, and fold it like a blessing. The priests come in number tonight, not the single tired chaplain with his traveling cross, but a little procession under a banner embroidered with a saint's hand and a golden key. One carries a reliquary, a sliver of bone behind glass, and when the men see it, a hush moves like a breeze through barley. Helmets tip, foreheads pressed to metal rims. The priest's Latin is round and steady. You don't understand the words, but you understand the shape of them. A boy in a red coat follows, slinging holy water from a sprig of yew that smells greener than anything in the camp. Droplets stipple your face and leave the iron on your lips, tasting briefly of rain. Not all charms are the church's. A Welshman in your file ties a knotted thread around his right wrist and whispers 3 names into the night. The mercenary, who joked on the muster field, now rubs a tiny saint badge between forefinger and thumb until it warms. An old man draws a circle with his boot heel and taps his bill on each point like a compass blessing. Nobody mocks anyone. This close to morning, Every door to mercy deserves a knock. Discipline sharpens too. A patrol yanks a man from the shadow of a wagon, his pack already slung and his boots turned the wrong way. The sergeant says countersign, and the man gives him the one from sunset, not the one changed at moonrise. They drag him to the provost. You don't see what happens next. The line of tents makes sure of that. But the provost's cart carries a short beam and a rope, and when the sergeant returns he walks slower and nobody asks why. Later you hear the squeak of wheels and tell yourself it is just a cart. Just a cart. Food is issued again. Not because there is enough but because men fight badly on promises. A pannier of smoked fish appears by your fire. Small river things, stiff as sticks. You set one on a twig over coals and watch the skin buckle and spit. Thomas holds his too near and loses it in the ash. You split yours without speaking. He nods and chews and does not thank you because saying thank you would make you both think about tomorrow in a way neither of you can stand. As the camp settles, sound thins to the edges of things. A harness creaking, a cough swallowed into a sleeve, the dull thud of a mallet far off where some last hedge stake is being persuaded into earth. You lie back and try to steer your breath into longer ropes. Instead, memory arrives. Your youngest prying a pebble from the furrow and calling it treasure. Your wife's hands red from the washtub, and faintly sweet with soap. The peculiar quiet of a field at dawn when the larks rise. You do not let the pictures linger. They are hooks. Sometime after midnight, the sky clears with the petty cruelty of weather that has learned to be beautiful when men cannot afford it. Stars frost the black. The moon lays a pale path across the trampled ground. Sentries pace that path with spears upright, the points sketching small circles against Orion's belt. Beyond the ditch, owls work the rough grass. Blind to banners, you drift at last and jolt awake to a sound almost too small to notice. A pebble ticking your helmet brim. You sit up, and for a heartbeat the world holds only breath. A shadow moves along the outer hedge. Not a man, lower, smoother. A dog, you think, until it stops and you see the glint of a rivet line where a face should be. A helm. Another shadow behind it. You whisper the password. Nothing answers but the hedge. The sentry to your left lifts his spear and then lowers it with the deliberation of someone deciding not to be a fool. He shapes the countersign with his mouth, and you pass it along like a thread through hands. The shadows fade back into the dew, and you do not know if you have seen scouts, ghosts, or fear walking on four legs. Dawn does not rise so much as leak. First the eastern tents grow edges. Then the world becomes damp paper taking ink. Fires, kept low all night, blink into coals. The drum that taught your feet to march now discovers a second beat, lighter, quicker, as if learning a new language. Orders come in short, clipped pieces. Break shelter. On your lord. Stand to. You undo the knots of your lean-to with fingers that have forgotten how to be hands. The straw under your cloak steams faintly when you lift it. You cinch your belt an extra hole because the habit seems like strength. Men begin to look like soldiers through force of will. Hats are squared, laces cinched, spare cords tied around wrists. The chalk marks you smeared last night shine against wool gone the color of old rain. You dip your fingers in ash and black the glare on your bill's blade, copying the archer who showed you where shine becomes target. He nods once, as if this makes you less delicious to fate. The banner with the pale tower rises on its pole, shook out by a boy whose hands tremble only when he thinks they are not watched. The drummer's new rhythm walks up your legs and locates your ribs. The horn gives 3 notes you have never heard before, and now must never forget. Somewhere beyond the mist a different horn answers with a different song entirely. Form, the sergeant's call, and the hedge of men you helped build becomes a hedge of iron. Shields go edge to edge. Poles set forward and down. The earth under your boots is just damp enough to accept a stance. Your breath takes the shape of the drill in when the drum speaks, out when it waits. Thomas stands at your shoulder, jaw tight, eyes on the line where light stops and not light begins. A captain rides before the ranks. His horse's breath steams, and the animal flicks an ear at your bill, as if it recognizes a cousin. The captain lifts his sword to point, not at the enemy you cannot see yet, but at the space you will occupy to survive the hour. Hold, he says. The word is thin for a thing so heavy. The sun's rim lifts and paints the fog a color you cannot name. Figures start to resolve at the far edge of the field. First smudges, then men with banners. Then men whose banners mean to take your breath and your bread and leave the rest to crows. The drum stops. For a heartbeat, the whole world is only in hail. Then from the pale wall of mist ahead, something hisses, a long rising whisper like rain finding dry leaves, and you realize it is not rain at all, but the first flight of arrows coming for your line. The hiss grows into a roar. You see it before you hear it. A grey cloud arching through the air like a storm given feathers. Then comes the sound, sharp and heavy, like rain on wood. Arrows strike shields, the ground, flesh, men grunt, stumble, drop. You've heard that arrows whistle, but they don't. They whisper, a soft tearing of the air before they arrive. The sound of the first volley stays in your bones even as the next begins. Shields, the sergeant bellows, and the front rank kneels, shields overlapping like scales. You crouch behind them, pressing your head against the rim of your helmet, the bill's shaft clutched tight in your hands. The second volley comes. An arrow splits the ground inches from your boot. Another thunks into the wood near your knee. The man to your left takes one in the shoulder. He screams once, a raw, animal sound, then falls forward. The gap he leaves feels like a hole in the world. The drummers keep time. Boom, boom. The sound cuts through panic, a heartbeat bigger than fear. Forward, the captain shouts. Keep the line. You rise with the others, and the field that was still mist and rumor a heartbeat ago now opens before you. The enemy, their banners strange and beautiful, their lines drawn neat against the chaos. They're close enough now that you can see the glint of armor, the flash of spearheads catching the new sun. The knights at your flank begin to move, horses snorting clouds of steam. The earth shakes beneath them. You've never seen so many horses together, a tide of muscle and metal rolling past. The banners streaming above them like living fire. For a moment, the sight almost lifts you out of fear. Almost, then you see what they're riding toward. Another wall of men, another storm of arrows. The captain shouts again. The order you've dreaded. Advance. Your boots pull free of the mud with wet sighs as the line lurches forward. The polearm is heavier now, or maybe your arms are weaker. The smell of sweat, earth and iron fills your nose. Ahead, the knights thunder into the first clash. The noise is unreal, like wood splintering, like the sky itself breaking. You can't see much, just flashes of movement, a horse rearing, a plume snapping, the quick gleam of steel. The arrows stop. For a moment you think the archers have run out, but the silence is worse. It means they're waiting. Then the enemy's drums begin, faster, sharper, alien to your ears. Men shout, horns answer, and suddenly you're running. Not marching, not advancing, running. The ground tilts beneath you, the wind tearing past your face, and the line that was so straight, so careful, begins to unravel. You crash into the first wave of enemy levies. They look just like you, pale, wide-eyed, frightened men with farm tools and borrowed blades. There's no battle cry, only the sound of impact. Wood on wood, metal on flesh. You thrust with your bill and feel it strike something soft, then hard, then soft again. You pull back and it's heavier. A man falls at your feet. You don't look at his face. You step over him because there's nowhere else to go. The line behind pushes forward. You push too, because if you stop, you die. Thomas is beside you, his axe rising and falling in jerky rhythm. His lips move, but you can't hear what he's saying. Around you, the world is nothing but motion. Shields slamming, men shouting, the endless clang of steel. A knight's horse stumbles through the crush, its flank bleeding, its rider half gone from the saddle. The horse screams, eyes white, then collapses, crushing two men beneath. You keep moving. You have to. At some point the mist breaks. The sun is higher now, but it doesn't bring warmth. It just shows you more. The chaos stretching across the field. Men locked in knots of fighting. Flags torn and trampled. You glimpse the royal banner still standing near the ridge. It flutters like something alive, like it's breathing, though the men beneath it are dying fast. An enemy charge surges from your right. The line buckles. Hold, the sergeant yells, but the voice that's carried you through days of marching suddenly sounds small. A group of men in chainmail rushes forward, better armed, better trained. Their shields form a wall. Your spears splinter against it. One of them swings a sword into the man beside you. The blade bites deep into his neck. A spray of red arcs across your cheek. You shove your bill forward again, blind, desperate, until you feel it catch between ribs. The man crumples, dragging the pole from your grip. You stagger back, gasping. Thomas grabs your arm and hauls you upright. Move, he shouts, his voice a thin wire against the roar. You stumble toward the center where the press of men is thickest. The air is so full of smoke and dust you can barely breathe. Somewhere behind you the knights regroup, their horns blaring, a signal you can't understand. A trumpet sounds on the enemy's side. Short, sharp, final. Their archers rise again, loosing point blank into the melee. An arrow punches through your sleeve, grazing your arm. You drop, half in shock, half in instinct. The world tilts sideways. The ground is cold and slick beneath your palms. You look up and see the field as it really is. Not a battle, not lines and formations, just chaos. Men crawling, bleeding, shouting for mothers and saints. Horses rolling, dying in the mud. The smell of blood and waste hangs thick enough to taste. The nobles' bright armor is smeared black, their banners sagging, their shouts turning from command to panic. You crawl toward the edge of the melee, dragging your arm, your bill lost somewhere behind you. Thomas is still standing, swinging his axe in wide, tired arcs. He doesn't see the man coming behind him. You try to shout, but your voice is gone. The sword flashes, and Thomas goes down without a sound. Something breaks inside you, something quieter than fear. You grab a fallen spear, and lunge forward, but by the time you reach him, the fight has already moved on. He lies on his side, eyes open, the mud seeping into his hair. You can't stay. You know you can't. The line is collapsing. The sergeant's shouts have turned to screams. You run, not away, not exactly, just sideways, through gaps in the press, through the fog, until you're behind the ridge where the wounded gather. The noise still follows, a constant rumble that won't end. Around you, men sit staring at nothing, blood pooling beneath them. A few pray, most just breathe. You collapse beside a broken cart, chest heaving. You try to clean the blood from your face with your sleeve, but it only spreads. You look back toward the field, but all you can see is smoke. The royal banner is still there, a shred of color against the grey, but it's lower now, wavering. A sound rises over the din, not a horn, not a drum, a chant, deep, rhythmic, foreign. The enemy's war cry rolling across the field like thunder. It grows louder, closer. You realize the fighting isn't done. The ridge isn't safe. The wounded aren't safe. Someone grabs your shoulder. A captain, face streaked with soot, eyes burning. Back in line, he shouts. They're coming again. You look toward the ridge, where figures are emerging through the smoke. A new wave, armored, advancing fast. Your body is shaking. You can barely lift your weapon. But when the horn calls again, long and low, something in you moves before your mind can stop it. You rise, feet sinking into mud, and face the smoke, and from within it, through the flicker of firelight and ash, comes the silhouette of a knight, not yours, galloping straight toward you. The silhouette grows, until it's a man of metal on a mountain of muscle, the plume split by wind, the visor, a blank sunlit slit. The captain's voice rips across the ridge. Hedge, down pole's knees. Your file moves because the body remembers what the knight taught. Points forward, butts planted, feet braced. You crouch, bill low, the hook canted to catch what the world is sending. The first hooves hit the churned ground, and the earth speaks through your bones. Horses are not fools. They shy at thorn and ditch. They flow around a hedge that means death. But a battlefield squeezes choices thin. The chargers press on because hands of steel and leather command them to. because the line behind gives them nowhere else to go. The first animal senses the angled stakes you drove in darkness, throws its weight left, and slams shoulder to shoulder with the next. For a breath, the two become a single creature with too many legs. Your front rank holds. The horse's eye finds yours. Huge, wet, furious, then flashes past as the animal skids and recovers, the rider's knee nearly in your teeth. Steel lands on wood. A sword batters a neighbor's shaft into splinters. The stump punches back into the knight's thigh, and he yelps inside his helm, the sound oddly human. You shove your bill's hook upward, aiming not for flesh but for tack, reins, strap, girth. The iron finds leather with a tug that jolts your shoulder. One cut. Two. The strap parts and the great saddle skews. The rider fights the tilt, weight wrong, balance gone. Another hand, someone you'll never know, jams a spear low into the horse's chest where the plate doesn't reach. The animal screams and crumples forward like a collapsing tent. Rider and beast vanish in a spray of mud and breath. To your right, a charger makes the gap your line dreaded. Its chest clips two planted poles that were set an inch too shallow. Men tumble. The horse stumbles but does not fall. The knight stands in his stirrups to strike. A shield rises late. The blade shears the rim, bites through fingers. The man behind doesn't even curse. He folds around the loss like paper in rain. You lunge sideways, catching the bridle with your hook and wrenching. The bit tears the animal's mouth. Its head jerks. The knight brings his pommel down on your hat with a sound like a bell. For a second the world shrinks to a ring of brightness and a taste of iron. Your legs wobble. You cling to the shaft because it is the last straight thing in a bent universe. Then the second wave hits the stakes you set true. Points bite deep. Horses rear and wheel, lashing out with hooves like hammers. A man beside you vanishes backward under a rearing belly. The hoof that finds his ribs sounds like a mallet on green wood. You swallow a noise you didn't know you could make and hold. Somewhere behind, the drummer shifts to the slow, heavy beat that means stay. You do. Hooks up. The sergeant screams. Legs and leather. The billmen obey. Hooks snag stirrup leathers. Blades rake pasterns. You learn the exact resistance of tendon and the horrible slack that comes after. The line steadies. A knight toppled from his saddle thrashes in plate, helpless as a beetle. He reaches for a dagger shorter than your palm. 4 hands pin his wrists and a 5th rips the helm latch free. The face underneath is pale, bearded, roughly your age. He wheezes a single word, maybe a name, maybe mercy. 2 men look at each other in a pause that could hold a prayer. Then someone behind them roars, "Leave him, because ransoms are for people with banners, not for hedges of ash and hunger." The knight's eyes follow you as you turn back to the living danger. They are not the eyes of a monster. That will find you at night for a long time. Horns crack the air. Yours, then not yours. The cavalry peels away, not broken so much as bleeding, and a new shape grows in the smoke. A block of men on foot, close ranked, their pikes a forest advancing on legs. Their faces are set, cheeks stubbled, breath pluming. Between their files move men with long knives and short hammers, the kind that pry open shells. Behind them trundle squat wooden frames, pavises, painted boards tall as a man. Crossbowmen duck behind them, and crank windlasses with back muscles thick as ropes. Your archers step out like men, stepping into rain they cannot avoid. They plant their stakes, set their feet, and raise you. The first volley goes low and hard, heavy shafts that don't arc so much as insist. You feel the breath of it on your cheek. The bodkins climb, hang, and fall with that same intimate whisper that never announces itself as terror until it has spoken in flesh. Men in the pike block drop, their lines closing the holes as if the ground itself had shrugged. The crossbows reply with the sound of doors slamming. A quarrel smashes into the wicker shield. 2 men left of you and punches through both layers to die humming in the mud between their boots. One of them looks down at it as if the earth had grown a thorn. Step, plant, thrust. The sergeant's voice becomes a metronome, not a plea. The pikes come on. Hedge meeting. Hedge. This is not the wild churn of horses. This is geometry with blood. The first contact is a dull, massy shove. Wood against wood, men behind men, breath pumping. You find the seam between 2 opposing spear points, and jam your bill through, twist and drag. A pike head skates down your shaft and bites a groove near your hand. You feel the wrong note in the wood and know this pole won't see dusk. You switch grip without thinking, shortened like a cudgel, and jab the iron beard into the meat above a knee that's poorly guarded. The man screams and folds. His pike falls. The forest shifts. From the left, something coughs. A flat, ugly sound like a smith's bellows punctured. A sheet of smoke belches from behind your own lines, where a squat cart sits with iron tubes bristling. A ribble dequin, the older men called it last night. A cart of little guns meant to spit at once. It spits. The air stings with saltpeter and rotten eggs. In the enemy front rank, 3 men drop in the same bewildered motion, as if a trapdoor had opened under their feet. A cheer tries to rise and fails, because nobody has breath to spend. Your eyes water, black grains of powder grit your tongue. The pike push strains, ground underfoot churned to porridge, arms lead heavy, mouths raw. Someone behind you starts humming a hymn off key, and for reasons too tangled to name, it puts your spine back where it belongs. The drummer hears it and threads a beat under it, and for 6 heartbeats the world is only that tune, and the iron arguing in your hands. Then a different horn, thin, urgent, cuts from your rear. You risk a glance. On the ridge, men are dragging a bombard, an iron-mouthed beast, into a new angle, cursing and heaving. The gunners do math with hands and eyes. Tamp, prime, aim at a banner you can't see. A spark kisses the touch hole. The world blinks white and slams your chest with a palm big as God's. The stone ball lumbers away, a dark thought rolling low. You lose it in the smoke. A heartbeat later, far ahead, something that looked solid remembers it is only people and wind. The enemy line hesitates. Hesitation is a door. Your captain sees it shove open an inch and shouts a word you've never heard from him. Joyful, savage, press. The line surges. Your pole cracks at last with a sound like lightning launched backwards. You let the forward half go and step into the gap with the haft like a quarterstaff. A man rises in front of you with a mace like a fruiting branch. You meet him once on the wrist, bone or iron, something gives. He hisses and swings with the left. You duck, the head hisses over your hat brim, and your second strike punches his throat soft. You hear a sound you will never be able to explain later. On your right, a parvis falls, its painted face smearing into earth. A crossbowman scrabbles for the board, and catches your eye with an expression that has nothing to do with hatred and everything to do with being very far from home. A quarrel from your side hits him high, and shoves him down like a hand on a child's head. You take a breath and another because breath is the only coin you can still afford. The enemy line begins to fold, not backward but sideways. An ugly, clever move. Their left peels like bark and slides toward your open flank, where the cavalry's first shock tore holes that your hedge never fully patched. Your sergeant's head whips that way. His mouth opens. The word refuse claws out, angle back, curl the line, don't let them around. Men try to obey in mud that keeps the feet it likes. The formation kinks, then kinks again. The drummer hammers the shape he wants into the air, but sound is not rope. You feel the change before you see it. A draft on your neck where there should be a back at your back. Somebody has found a way through the willow-choked dip behind the ridge. The river bend you crossed 2 days ago when you filled your skin and saw a pale hand turn in reeds. Figures move where only baggage should be. Light shields, short swords, quick steps. They are not lost. Your captain wheels his horse to answer both fronts at once, and for a breath becomes enormous. Voice, sword, animal, banner, all one will. He points to the river dip. Rear on me. Half the file turns as if jerked by a string. Half stays facing the pikes that haven't forgiven you yet. You pivot with them, feet sliding, breath like a rasp. The hedge you helped build at dawn is now 2 hedges, back to back, and you are in the seam. Through the smoke and willow lint, the new attackers resolve. Helmets low, round shields painted with simple marks, blades meant for the close and the quick. One of them lifts his hand and gives a small signal. They break into a run, light and sure, as if the mud were their own floorboards. You set your broken haft, knuckles whitening, and feel the drum hunt for a new heartbeat between the 2 fights. And as you draw your next breath, the royal banner at the ridge's crown, your sky anchor, your one straight line, jerks, dips, and begins to sink. The royal banner sinks like a wounded bird. For a moment, no one believes what they're seeing. The silk flutters, twists, and then vanishes behind the ridge. It's as though someone has snuffed out the sun. Every man who can see that spot feels it in the gut. A quiet, wordless drop, the kind that happens just before the world turns. Hold the line. The sergeant bellows, but the command is already cracking around the edges. The noise changes, not the disciplined thud of marching feet or the measured beat of drums, but the deep, wet thunder of chaos. Men begin shouting names instead of orders. Some are calling to friends, some to God. You grip your broken haft tighter, knuckles white, and feel the line start to move. Not forward, not back, but sideways, like something slipping from its shape. The pike block ahead slams into what's left of your front rank. The impact is like being caught between the tide and a wall. You shove, your shoulder wedged into the back of the man in front, your ribs grinding against Thomas's absence beside you. Someone behind you screams to push harder. Another voice shouts that the flanks are gone. Nobody knows which to listen to, so everyone listens to both. The air thickens. Every breath is borrowed from someone else's lungs. Men press shoulder to shoulder until armor groans. The world narrows to the back of the man in front of you, the patch of fabric between his neck and helmet. You can't move your arms fully. You stab downward blindly, feel the haft vibrate as the point meets something soft, and then the push of a body collapsing in the dark. Then the smell hits. Not sweat or blood. Those are familiar by now. This is different. It's iron and mud, and something metallic and sweet. Something that doesn't belong in air meant for breathing. It seeps through the nostrils, settles in the throat, coats the tongue. You gag but can't turn your head. A hand grabs your shoulder. Not Thomas, someone else, and you're shoved sideways as the line folds again. The left flank has broken. You can't see it, but you can feel it. The way a boatman feels the river change under the hull. The pressure on your side eases, then returns with triple the weight as the enemy surges through the gap. Men scream behind you now. The crush tightens. It's no longer two lines facing each other. It's one writhing mass, flesh and wood and steel packed together so close that no one's fighting anymore, just surviving. A man's helmet is torn away in front of you. His hair sticks to his face, his mouth wide open, sucking air that isn't there. He's not bleeding yet, just drowning on dry land. He tries to lift his head, but the crowd presses down. You try to help, but your hand can't reach. The noise around you is thunder and animal sounds and metal shrieking against bone. Someone near your knee goes down. You don't see it, but you feel it. The sudden shift in height, the pull of gravity. The crush takes him, and the space he leaves fills instantly. There's a moment, short, cruel, unforgettable, where the air disappears entirely. The world turns silent in the way deep water is silent. You realize the sound has been pushed out by the weight of bodies. Your ears ring. Your vision goes white at the edges. A man beside you bites at his strap just to have something to do with his mouth. You open yours and drag in a thin burning thread of air that tastes of rust. A drum sounds again. Faint, frantic, far too fast. It's no longer rhythm. It's panic made music. The captain's voice reaches you through the din, shrill and breaking. Back, fall back to the ridge. Regroup, but the line can't hear him. It doesn't know what back means anymore. The crush has its own gravity now, pulling men toward the center where the pikes are tangled and broken, where the horses fell, where men fight with daggers and teeth. You shove against the tide trying to reach space, but the bodies move like water, one moment giving way, the next crashing back. Then, suddenly, you're free. The crowd bursts outward as the enemy drives through from the flank. You stumble, falling to your knees in the churned mud. The noise returns all at once. Screaming, metal, the hollow boom of guns. You look up just in time to see a horse rear above you. Its chest slick with blood, its eyes rolling white. The rider swings down with a mace the size of your head. You roll, the blow slamming into the ground where your skull was a breath ago. Dirt sprays your face. You swing your broken haft up and jam the splintered end into the horse's belly. It lurches, collapses sideways, crushing its own rider with a crack like splitting timber. You crawl free, gasping. The field is unrecognizable. No ranks, no banners, just fog and wreckage. Men are fighting in twos and threes, some with swords, some with hands, some too wounded to tell which side they're on. A man drags himself past you on his elbows, entrails trailing behind like roots. Another sits in the mud, laughing and sobbing at once, his arm gone to the shoulder. A cannon roars again from somewhere unseen. The shot sails over, tearing through air with a scream that isn't human. It lands behind the ridge, the sound of wood splintering, men shouting. You look up to see the royal banner rise again, halfway this time, flapping weakly like a dying bird's wing. Hope and horror twist together in your chest. You find another weapon, a pike snapped in half, and stagger toward the ridge. The ground sucks at your boots. You trip over bodies you don't look at. The fog grows thicker, black now, smelling of gunpowder and rain. For a moment the field feels empty, as if everyone has already left except for you and the dead. Then, through the smoke you see movement, men in armor moving fast, deliberate, organized. Not your side. You turn to run, but your legs are slow, heavy. Your body no longer belongs to you. A blow glances off your helmet and spins you sideways. You fall, hands sinking into mud that feels warm. You taste iron again. Someone grabs you from behind, wrenching you upright. You swing blindly, but the grip holds. It's one of your own, the captain, bleeding from a gash across his brow. "We're pulling back," he shouts, in your ear. "Ridge, move." You nod, though you can barely hear him. The ground beneath you tilts. You stumble forward, each step a fight against gravity. The ridge is close, just a few dozen paces, but the air there glows orange. Fire, the baggage wagons are burning, a ring of flame swallowing the last of your supplies. Your camp, your home, for every night since the levy began. The smoke roars upward, black against the grey sky. You and the captain reach the crest together. Below you can see the remains of your army streaming away, a broken flood of men fleeing through the marshy lowlands. The enemy is close behind, their horns blaring. The captain stops, chest heaving, and looks back toward the banner. "Hold it," he cries, voice cracking. But the banner isn't rising anymore, it's gone. He looks at you then, just for a second, and something passes in his eyes. Not command, not fear, something else. He turns to speak, but the sound that comes isn't his voice. It's another horn, deep, low, and far too close. You look back down the slope and see them, not the armored knights this time, but the men behind them, fresh troops, rested, advancing in perfect ranks, spears upright, shields shining. The ones who haven't bled yet. The captain whispers, "God help us," and lifts his sword one last time. And in the moment before the fresh line crashes into what's left of yours, you feel the earth tremble, not from the charge, but from something heavier. Far behind, beyond the smoke and ruin, new thunder rolls. Not storm, not drums, guns, big ones. Someone, maybe yours, maybe theirs, has brought the bombards to bear, and you realize the crush you've just escaped was only the first act. The real storm hasn't even begun. The bombards speak, and the field answers by falling still. It doesn't happen all at once. First the big guns roll their slow thunder across the ridge. Then the shudder runs underfoot. Then the shouting thins as if a hand were closing over the mouth of the world. You feel the concussion in your ribs more than you hear it. Somewhere ahead, a banner you don't recognize topples, and the knot of men beneath it seems to loosen like wet rope. The push around you slackens. A man trips over your boot and does not rise. Another stares at his palm as if surprised to find it empty of anything that could help. The order to fall back is not a shout now but a tired suggestion traveling from mouth to mouth. You obey because your legs decide they will. Mud lets go with a sucking sound. You stumble up the slope to the lee of the ridge where smoke hangs low. The ground here is a midden of broken shafts, torn straps, smashed buckles, a heel of bread pressed into the print of a hoof. The baggage circle is a memory of fire and ribs of wagons. Men move through it like figures cut from darker cloth. No one runs now. The run is over. What's left is walking with the particular care of people who have to look where they place their feet, because the earth is crowded. The sound has become small. A groan that isn't sure it wants to be heard. A pot ringing where it rolled into a cart. The hiss of a rope burning on a wheel. Far off, a horse cries once and then doesn't. You find water by accident. Rain pooled in a torn parvis. It tastes of paint, wood smoke, and relief. You pass the shield to the man beside you without looking at his face. He nods to the ground, and you understand. Keep moving. Behind you the surgeon's corner is building itself. Tarp on poles, a plank on barrels, a bucket of water turned pink by rinsing. 2 men lay a third on the plank. The surgeon, bare arms the color of old oak, eyes rimmed with red, touches the mangled forearm, and makes a decision with a tiny nod that ruins futures. He tightens a strap above the elbow until veins rise. A mate slides a stick between the man's teeth and says, "Bite." The sore is small and hungry. You look away and still know the moment cautery meets flesh by the smell alone, that alchemy of iron, meat and vinegar, meant to argue with the air. Priests move among bodies with the steady courtesy of men passing out bread. Their Latin is a thin thread stitching between open moments. Absolve, quasimus. A few men grab their sleeves, not to plead, just to be touched by something that isn't wood or iron. One priest kneels so often his habit is mud to the waist. He keeps kneeling. A woman with a basket, camp follower, face hard as a knuckle, hands him strips of clean linen without being asked. Mercy is moving in small coins today. Where the line broke, the ground is plowed flesh. You step wrong, and your boot goes deep into something that yields and holds. You wrench free, shaking, and try not to learn the lesson of that texture. Close by, a mercenary you recall for his grin, lies on his back, jaw clenched on a saint badge that has pressed its imprint into his lip. His helmet is gone, his eyes are open, and too clear. You close them with your left hand, and only then realize your right is shaking so hard, the broken haft dances in your grip, like a reed. Then the living come, the other living. At first, they are only shapes along the far edge, figures moving with purpose where you have none. You brace for another charge, but they do not come like fighters, they come like crows. Walking, strippers, the field calls them when it has breath for names. Men and women who turn war back into goods. They move quickly, expertly, as if hurrying through rain. Buckles pop, straps are cut. A dagger worries at a glove and takes the hand with it when leather refuses. Nobody stops them. Some of your own bargain quietly for a better hat, for a knife, for a boot not split at the toe. Need is a language older than flags. A herald in livery, dirtied to the color of dusk, picks his way like a man in church. He stops at bodies with metal worth noting, unrolls a damp parchment, and writes, names if there are names to be had, devices if not, a ring, a mark. Ransom is a story for tomorrow, if tomorrow can be convinced to exist. Toward the rear, a line forms that isn't a formation, the newly not dead, waiting for the surgeon's eye. A boy holds his own ear in his hand like a shell, and tries to fit it back. Another's lower lip flaps when he speaks. He chooses not to speak. A pikeman's knee has opened the wrong way. His friend steadies the leg and hums a tune off-key. The same hymn that found you earlier, now thinner, braver for being so. You look for Thomas without intending to. You find his hat first, the kettle rim dented where a pommel made a mark like a thumb in clay. Near it, something he wore on a leather thong at his neck, a little wooden token. Your wife carved one winter with a knife that wasn't sharp enough for the pride she put in it. A barley head, rough and sweet. You close your fist around it and feel both of them, the man gone and the woman he left, and have to steady yourself against a wheel because the ground blurs with heat behind your eyes. Orders sift down slowly now, as if they have been walking far to reach you. Remnant to the chapel, someone calls, pointing toward a squat stone building on a low rise, roof half gone, bell fallen, and cracked beside the door. Count off. If you can stand, you're counted. You go because you can stand. Along the way you pass a man kneeling beside what's left of his brother, coaxing him to drink. He tips the cup and water runs out through the hole in the man's side, dark as tea. The kneeling man laughs once in a way that hurts to hear, and then keeps trying. because trying is also a kind of prayer. At the chapel the captain waits, head bound with a linen strip gone grey at the knot. He has lost the look of a rider, and found the look of a shepherd, who knows he will not save many sheep today. A scribe notes numbers with a stick of charcoal on the white of the door. The counts are bad. You can tell by the scribe's throat moving when he swallows between figures. The captain's voice is quiet and bruised. We go by the ford at dusk. Cross fast, no torches. The enemy's horse will scour the roads by moonrise. Those who can't walk. He doesn't finish. He doesn't have to. He points instead to the surgeon's corner, to the priests, to the wagons with sides high enough to hide one man under straw, if he remembers not to cough. Dusk finds you moving again, this time with a stealth that feels childish, men too big for hiding, trying to learn how to be mice. The remnant snakes down the hollow lane toward the river, boots whispering in dust that has drunk enough blood for one day. The wind has turned, it brings the field's new voice with it. Flies, their song is thick, insistent, alive, with an enthusiasm that makes your skin crawl. You keep your mouth closed and breathe through your nose, and wish for winter. At the ford the world is all willow and shadow. The water runs low and quick, over stones polished by centuries of hooves and feet, that thought they were just going somewhere and not leaving it. Quiet, the sergeant says, though no one needed telling. You step into the river and the cold climbs your calves like a hand that has decided to be kind. Stones slide under your soles. You feel with your toes and place each foot as if the river will remember rudeness. Halfway across, a shape bumps your thigh, soft, swollen, turning once in the current. For a terrible moment you think it has chosen you. It slides on. You keep moving and do not look down again. The far bank gathers you in wet to its knees. Men pull one another up by elbows. Soft mud makes small sucking applause for survivors. Someone whispers numbers, 10, 19, 23, as if counting is a spell to hold the group together in the dark. Behind you the ford fills with the slow sound of men pretending not to be afraid of water. You are 2 steps into the reeds when the night acquires a new seam. A prickle runs the length of your neck. You hold your breath and hear it, not a horn, not a drum. Those would almost be a kindness, but a small careful clack-clack, then a second, then many polite as knitting needles in a quiet room. Crossbow windlasses, more than one. Close, ahead and slightly left. A hand closes on your sleeve. The captain's whisper is a thread you can barely catch. Down, hold. You sink into the reeds, the river licking at your boots again. Across the dark water, low lights wink once and settle. Lanterns hooded, set close to the ground. And from that bank, in a voice not unkind and therefore worse, someone calls in your language. Friends, give the word, as if the right countersign might yet turn this night back into safety. The voice drifts over the water, smooth as oil on glass. For a heartbeat, no one moves. Even the river hesitates around your boots. The reeds whisper, but it's only the wind pretending to be breath. Somewhere in the dark, an owl gives a soft, uncertain call and is answered by another owl too quickly, too perfectly. That's the signal. Everyone in the line knows it at once, even if they've never heard it before. Down. The captain breathes again. But it's already too late. A dozen flashes bloom on the far bank, brief sparks like fireflies before thunder. Then comes the sound, the metallic whip-crack of crossbows firing almost in unison. The air between you and the other side turns solid. Men grunt and topple, their silhouettes folding into the reeds. One body splashes forward, face first into the current, the water closing over with a small, almost tender sigh. The second volley comes before you can even flinch. Bolts slice through the rushes like thrown knives. One shreds the sleeve of your tunic. Another punches into the man behind you. No shout, just a slow collapse. Back across. Someone shouts, but the whisper of command is drowned by chaos. The river that moments ago was just cold is now alive, thrashing, screaming, swallowing men who've forgotten how to swim in their armor. The captain tries to rally the line, waving his sword toward the bank. Hold the near side. Form up. His voice is hoarse, almost breaking. You see him silhouetted against the flashes of light, brave and pointless at once. Then another volley sings, and the captain jerks once, sword flaring silver as it falls from his grip. He goes down without a sound, the river taking him with barely a ripple. The instinct to flee grabs the survivors like a hand around the throat. Men scramble for the far shore, tripping over the bodies of those who'd led them. The current isn't deep, but it's strong, and panic makes fools of even the strong. Shields slip away, billhooks vanish into the dark water. You stagger backward, slipping on a stone, barely catching yourself. The river is a voice now, whispering that the only way out is through. You listen, you run. You reach the near bank and drag yourself out by the roots, gasping. The air feels heavier than the water did. Behind you, the reeds are shaking with the weight of men still trying to crawl to safety, their armor dragging them down inch by inch. Crossbow bolts hiss through the dark, some striking the mud inches from your face. You keep crawling, pulling yourself into a tangle of brambles that tears your palms but gives you cover. Then, silence. Not peace. The kind of silence that feels like a question being asked in a language you don't speak. You risk a glance back. The far bank is shrouded in mist and smoke, but you can see movement, shapes gliding between the willows, low and deliberate. They're crossing now, you realize. The ambushers are coming over, stepping through the same shallows that drowned your men. You can hear the soft clatter of armor, and the click of boots on stone. They move carefully, as if they already own the night. A voice calls out from your side. Too close. Stand. Form up, lads. Here. Here. It's one of your sergeants, voice ragged with exhaustion and disbelief. He's trying to pull the remnant together again. Maybe 20 men in all, their weapons half broken, their faces white with river mud. He raises a small torch to gather them. A mistake so bright it hurts your eyes. The first bolt hits him square in the chest. The torch drops, hissing as it rolls into the shallows. Scatter, someone yells. Scatter into the trees. You don't need telling. You move, crawling at first, then stumbling to your feet, then running. The forest begins only a few dozen paces from the bank, but each step feels like its own mile. Branches whip your face. Roots catch your boots. The dark here is thick, a living thing. Behind you, the river crackles with motion. The enemies advance, boots in the water, men shouting in that strange sing-song tongue. You keep moving until your lungs are knives. Finally, you collapse behind a fallen oak. Your breath comes in ragged pulls. Somewhere close by, you hear others. Soft groans, the rustle of bodies hiding where they can. You're not alone, but you might as well be. The night stretches, the sound of pursuit fades, but never fully dies. You can hear them talking to each other now and then. Calm, patient, methodical. Hunters, not soldiers. They're sweeping the bank, picking off the wounded, collecting prisoners, maybe finishing what the river started. You press yourself into the cold earth, and pray to be mistaken for part of it. Hours pass like that. Or maybe minutes. Time is broken now. The moon crawls higher through the bare branches, throwing pale bones of light across the forest floor. You rise, slow, careful. Your body feels like it belongs to someone else. You've lost your billhook somewhere in the river, but your dagger's still at your belt, its edge chipped but sharp enough for what comes next. You find others, 3, maybe 4, all half dead, eyes glazed but still following orders that no one's giving anymore. You don't speak, you just move together, the way animals do when they've survived the same fire. The forest slopes upward, the ground turning rocky. Somewhere ahead, you can hear the sound of running water again, smaller than the river, a brook maybe. You follow it, climbing until your legs tremble. The higher you go, the cleaner the air feels. You begin to think, foolishly, that you might have escaped. Then you smell it. Smoke, not campfire smoke. Thick, bitter, oily. You freeze. Ahead through the trees, a faint orange glow flickers. You creep forward, every nerve screaming that you shouldn't. The trees thin, and the hill opens into a clearing. It's the village, or what's left of it. The one that had fed your army 2 nights before, where the priest had begged for mercy, and the sergeants had taken grain anyway. It's burning now, roofs collapsed, timbers snapping in the heat. You can see shapes moving among the flames, soldiers, not yours. They work with quiet precision, dragging the dead into piles, overturning carts, spearing anything that twitches. One of them stoops to lift a fallen flag from the mud. Your banner. He wipes the dirt from the pale tower stitched into its cloth, and smiles before tossing it into the fire. You feel something twist deep in your chest. Not rage, not fear, just a cold certainty. There's no army left, no captain, no line, no war that can still be won. Just this fire, ash, and the echo of drums that stopped hours ago. The others see it too. One of them, a boy barely grown, starts to sob. Soundless at first, then louder, until another soldier clamps a hand over his mouth. But it's too late. A shout rises from below. Torches swing upward, eyes turning toward the trees. You run again. Branches tear at your cloak. Roots grab your ankles. The boy doesn't follow. You don't look back to see why. The forest goes on forever, black and endless. The light from the burning village fades behind you, until it's just another smear of color in the night. Your breath rattles like dry leaves. You stumble, catch yourself, and keep going. When you finally stop, it's because the world itself seems to end. A cliff edge, the ground falling away into nothing. You stare out at a valley, swallowed by fog. The moonlight turns it silver, peaceful, almost beautiful. Somewhere below you can hear water again. The steady sigh of a larger river. You take one step closer to the edge, boots scraping stone. Behind you, the forest glows faintly, where the fire has started to spread uphill. There's no road left, no army, no way back. And from deep within the fog below, you hear something impossible. The slow toll of a bell. One note, low and lonely, as if the valley itself were breathing. You freeze, listening. Then the bell rings again, closer this time, too close. You stand at the cliff's lip with the fire's glow at your back, and the valley breathing silver under the moon. The bell tolls again, one note, deep as old wood, rolling through the fog like a hand on the shoulder. It isn't a warning, not the panicked clang of alarm you've learned too well. It's slower, measured, as if someone far below is counting the night into even pieces. You ease along the edge until the rock slopes, and the path reveals itself in inches. A goat track stitched to the cliff face, pebbles whispering away into darkness with each step. The others follow without speaking. The boy who sobbed is gone. The tree line behind you glows dull orange, where the flames have found drier brush. You put your hand to the cold stone, and let it steady your breathing. Down, a turn, down again. The air grows cooler, damp with the nearness of water. The bell sounds once more, closer now, rounder, as if the metal itself were wrapped in cloth against the night. The fog parts to show a narrow meadow at the valley floor, pale with dew. Beyond it, candles bloom in small constellations along low buildings, squat roofs, a cloister's square, a garden bounded by wicker hurdles, an abbey, you realize, not grand, not rich, a house of stone that looks as if it grew from the riverbank, by stubbornness alone. The bell tower is stunted, half collapsed. The surviving bell hung low in a simple frame. A figure in a dark habit pulls the rope once and then coils it, as careful as a fisherman with his line. You step from rock to grass, and the earth accepts you. The river runs wider down here, a steady voice smoothing stones that have learned patience. Someone has staked willow hurdles along the near bank to catch driftwood. A heap of gathered branches lies drying under a lean-to. The path to the gate is rutted by carts, but swept clean. Even in moonlight, you can see the habit of order everywhere. Stacked tiles, coiled rope, a hoe leaning where it will be reached tomorrow, at dawn. It feels like standing outside a word you've forgotten how to pronounce. Home. The wooden wicket opens inward with the groan of wood that has carried centuries. A monk steps out, lantern cupped in his sleeve. His face is lined, his head tonsured, his eyes the peculiar brightness of men who rise before sunrise, enough times that their bodies begin to glow with borrowed light. He looks first at your hands, then at your feet, then at your eyes. Not a soldier's inventory, a healer's. You're late for compline, he says simply, as if you were expected. Come. Inside the enclosure, the world shrinks to shapes that know their names. The cloister walk, the refectory's long table, a trough for washing, a rack of drying herbs that turns the air to green, marigold, sage, yarrow, rosemary cut low against last frost. A lay brother with arms like rafters takes your elbow and guides you toward the wash trough without asking permission. You let him. Warm water, not much, enough to loosen the river from your skin. He hands you a scrap of linen to dry your face, and does not look away from the half-healed cuts that mean you belong to the road. The infirmary lives in a corner where light gathers. He is younger than you expect, sleeves rolled, fingers stained with salves and wine and smoke. He moves like a man used to choosing between bad options and making them gentle by hand. The others are seen first. The man with the torn calf muscle, the one with the arrow slit through the soft part of his ear, a lad whose hands will never quite close again. Cloth hisses through hands, stitches bite and hold. A draught of posset sweetened with something honey-like warms bellies that knot at the smell of meat. When your turn comes, he glances at the swollen places, and the places that aren't swollen yet, but will be by morning. He notes the old bridle welt across your shoulder with a tiny nod that says, "You survived something heavy." He cleans the shallow cut on your arm with wine. You brace for fire and get warmth, like a small sun pressing through cloth. For your head, he does not prescribe iron or knife, only a folded strip of linen, soaked in cool water, and a hand laid briefly to your brow. "Sleep," he says, as if the word itself were medicine. "At prime there will be broth." They bring bread, real bread, not army bread, risen and browned and perfumed with fennel seed. It breaks with a sound like soft snow, and tastes of ovens that didn't travel. The refectory is lamplit, the table scarred with knives, the benches polished by years of simple wait. The monks eat in silence, save for the reader at the lectern, his voice low, and even as he recites a life of a saint who loved work more than talk. You chew and listen without hearing. The words fold around you anyway, a blanket you didn't know you could still be given. After, the guest scriptorium becomes a dormitory, pallets on low frames, woolen blankets that smell faintly of smoke and lavender. Someone has left a little cup of rendered fat at the foot of each bed. The wick is braided flax. You sit, not yet lying down, because the body has forgotten how to surrender without a fight. In the stillness, other sounds step forward, the river drafting at the bank, the bell's wooden frame creaking, the sigh of someone finally asleep 2 pallets over after a week of not sleeping. You take from your pouch the small wooden token you found by the broken cart, the barley head tied to a thong. You turn it in your fingers until the ridges memorize your thumb. In the dim, it looks carved by a blade that wasn't quite sharp enough, the lines a little ragged, the pride in them unmistakable. You tie it to the bedpost with a knot that would offend a sailor and please a child, and it looks right there, like a field, leaning over a road to watch who passes. Later, the prior comes to speak with those who can bear talk. He asks no questions about banners or lords. He asks for names, and when men cannot say them, he asks for the names of fields, of dogs, of streams that know how to turn a wheel. He notes each on a wax tablet with the stylus of someone who knows that memory has a back door. "If any man here wakes in the dark," he says, "the lamp by the altar is kept for that." Then he does something none of your officers thought to do. He thanks you for bringing the wounded as far as you did. Sleep arrives not as a fall but as tide, in halfway out, in again. In the drift between, you hear the brothers at the night office, their voices carrying through stone with the feathered steadiness of geese on a winter lake. The psalm ends and leaves behind a bright quiet that settles in the joints. Your hands stop remembering their work. Your breath lengthens until the body decides to trust the bed. When you wake, it is to a sound you do not yet know how to fear. Spoons against wooden sides, a ladle finding the lip of a pot. Dawn has only reached the eastern lintels. The infirmary sets a bowl in your hands, barley broth thickened with root and leaf, honest as rain. The heat travels outward in ripples that smooth the cold places no blanket ever quite finds. Outside, someone is already at the herb beds with a basket. The day is beginning as if days were still a thing one could count on. You step into the cloister walk, and the light there is like warm water on stone. A rook hops along the coping and eyes you as if considering a bargain. Beyond the wall, the valley is exhaling mist in long threads. A cart creaks at the far gate, and the lay brother answers with a wave. 2 figures at the road, a man and a woman. leading a donkey under panniers heavy with something that clinks like bottles. Truces are made this way. You think with small trades at gates, with herbs, with salves, with a nod that says we will be neighbors even when the world insists we are not. You could stay, the thought is simple, treacherous, sweet, tend the garden. Help with the roof, learn the bell ropes. Let the river teach your feet its language until walking doesn't feel like leaving. You could take the barley token to the chapel lamp and warm it there until the wood remembers summer. The prior's shadow joins yours on the flagstones. He stands with his hands tucked in his sleeves, looking not at you but at the river. Men come down this valley, after every storm, he says, as if to the water. Some stay, some carry a message. Both are needed. He turns, and his eyes are kind in a way that makes you want to sit down very suddenly. If there is a name you must carry back to a door that still waits, we can find you a path at dusk that keeps to hedges. If there is no door, there is a spade and a bed. You nod because both are true in you at once. Somewhere above, faint as breath, a horn sounds, not the cry of charge, not the thin call of a scout, a different tone altogether. 3 notes, then a space, then 3 again. The way shepherds talk across distance when roofs are smoke and fields have forgotten where to end. The lay brother at the gate pauses with his hand on the bolt and squints up valley. The river keeps its voice low, as if listening. The prior lifts his head, and for the first time the calm in his face thins. He turns toward the bell. This video takes you far beyond the polished armor and shining banners of legend. It's a descent into the mud, blood, and human breath of medieval warfare. A world of conscripted farmers, smoke-thick camps, desperate marches, and the chaos where order collapsed into raw survival. Across 14 parts we walked with the common soldier through hunger, terror, exhaustion, and fleeting moments of grace. We watched armies break, comrades fall, and the true cost of war rise like smoke over the field. In the end, what endured wasn't glory, but the stubborn pulse of humanity, the will to live, remember, and rebuild when the drums finally fell silent. If this story carried you through the campfires, the marches and the chaos of the battlefield, if it helped you feel history rather than just hear it, we'd love to have you stay with us. Candlelit History brings the past to life through sound, story, and stillness. Every week we explore a different corner of history, the untold, the overlooked, the human heartbeat behind the dates and names. So, if you found yourself lost in this night of armor and fire, tap like hit, subscribe and ring that little bell icon so you don't miss the next journey back in time. It helps the channel grow, and it tells us you want more tales told by firelight. And we'd love to hear from you. What moment in history should we bring to life next? The fall of Rome, the voyages of lost explorers, the world of ancient samurai or forgotten queens? Tell us in the comments below, and your idea might become the next story whispered into the dark. Because history doesn't sleep, it waits to be remembered.